It started with a slam of a coffee cup. Not loud, but sharp, like a line being drawn. The young waitress looked the man dead in the eyes and said, "Sorry, we don't serve people like you here." Her voice carried more than just policy. It carried judgment, disgust. The man didn't flinch. He simply reached into his coat pocket, and that's when the diner fell silent. All eyes were on the old man. 3 minutes later, a uniformed police chief walked through the front door. And what he did next would leave the entire town talking for years. The diner sat off Highway 17, in a quiet Alabama town where the morning air still smells like pine and diesel. It was 7:04 a.m., a Friday. Locals filled the booths, truckers lined the counter. Old-timers nursed black coffee. A song by Patsy Cline played low on the radio. And then, he walked in, tall, weathered. Wearing a faded military coat, the edges frayed with time. His boots were scuffed, his gait stiff but proud. He looked like someone who'd seen more than he ever spoke about. He chose the booth near the back, half-shadowed, by a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. No one knew his name. Most just called him Walt. He came in once a week, ordered the same thing: eggs over easy, black coffee, wheat toast, but this time, it wasn't business as usual. The waitress was new. Barely 19. Hair in a messy ponytail, eyes bright with ambition and exhaustion. She had watched Walt from behind the counter, whispered something to the cook. When she approached his booth, tray in hand, she stopped short. Eyed his coat, the insignia, the old American flag patch. "You need to leave," she said. Walt looked up, confused. "I haven't even ordered yet." "I don't care. I don't serve people like you," she repeated, louder this time. A silence dropped over the diner. Forks hovered mid-air. The cook peeked out from the kitchen window. No one said a word, and then Walt. He reached into his coat. Some stood halfway up from their seats, hands twitching toward their phones. It was the South, and old instincts died hard. A man in a worn military coat, rejected in public, now reaching inside. But Walt didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a photograph. Worn. Faded. It showed a young man in uniform, smiling beside a black woman in nurse scrubs. On the back, in shaky cursive, "Germany, 1945, love always, M." He laid it gently on the table. "I fought so people could sit wherever they want," he said. "Even you." Walt had fought in World War II. He had rescued prisoners from concentration camps. He'd seen hatred in its rawest form, and dedicated his life to standing against it. After the war, he married Margaret, a nurse he met while stationed in Europe. They came back to Alabama and raised 3 children, and for 60 years, he came to this same diner. Always quiet, always polite. But today was different because Margaret had died last week, and this morning would have been their 66th anniversary. He came not for the food, but for the tradition. He'd sat at this booth every June 10th to honor her memory, and now he was being told to leave. Just then the door chimed. The diner turned. Police Chief Daniels stepped inside, a mountain of a man with a gentle face and salt and pepper beard. Everyone in town knew him, trusted him. He scanned the room. Something was off. "Problem here?" he asked, voice steady. The waitress stammered. "This man, he made people uncomfortable." Daniels walked over to Walt's booth. He looked down at the photograph, and his face changed. He reached for his badge and took it off, set it on the table next to the coffee cup. Then he stood at attention and saluted. The diner froze. The waitress's mouth dropped open. Daniels turned to the others. "This man saved my father," he said. Everyone turned toward him. "In 1945, my dad was 10 years old in Dachau. This man carried him out of that hellhole. That's the only reason I'm standing here today. He turned to the waitress. You don't serve him? Then I won't be served either. He walked behind the counter and poured Walt a fresh cup of coffee. Others followed. The cook came out carrying a plate of eggs. A teenage busboy brought over fresh toast. A mother handed Walt a small paper flower her daughter had made. No one said, sorry. They didn't have to. The silence said everything. Walt stayed for exactly 47 minutes. He finished every bite, nodded at every person who made eye contact. As he stood to leave, he turned to Daniels. You did good, son. Daniels swallowed hard. So did you. Walt left the photograph behind on the table, and with it, something else lingered, an invisible thread that pulled the town a little tighter together. The waitress never came back to work after that day, but for the next 5 years, someone, different each time, sat in that booth every June 10th, and always they ordered the same thing: eggs over easy, black coffee, wheat toast. Some stories aren't headlines. They don't make the news, but they live on in the quiet corners of everyday places, like a booth in a dusty diner, and the people brave enough to stand up when it counts. If this story moved you, share it, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were there that day? Subscribe for more true stories that reveal the best, and sometimes the worst, of who we are. This is Relieved Stories US, where a single image holds 1,000 truths.